The Henrys don't have any children or grandchildren that come. I can't remember.
Do you think it's kids have less interest because they have outside interests now that take so much of their time?
I'm sure of it. When Melanie lived in Middlesex, she used to come over here,
I know she did.
And it was hard for her to get the boys to come quite often. They had so many other things they wanted to do, so I'm sure it's the outside influences that...
Do you have any thoughts on what we can do to turn that around, or is it just part of the evolutionary process?
I don't know. There's no... I don't know of any young people, any children in Reed's Corners that you could, in close vicinity, that you could get to come to church. Do you? You know the kids around better than I do.
We're making attempts, but they're not beating down the doors.
That's right. Yeah.
Let's say that. What would you like to see different on Sundays that are not done now, or?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I can't think of any changes that could be made. I'm very happy with the way things go at the church now.
What's one or two things that you like about this church, Ted?
Well, the people are always very friendly, and it's good to go there and visit with people and get interested in what the minister has to say, and you go away feeling better about yourself. I guess that's about all I can say about it.
He likes Richard Brown's sermons. He always says that was a good sermon every time. He likes him.
Good, good. Is there a minister, I think I asked Juanita, that jumps out at you, Ted, in terms of someone that you really liked and admired, that you can think of? One of them that really sets apart?
Oh, I don't think so. I can't think of any one minister that I cared more about than any other. I've always been happy going there.
Is the
I just wish I could remember more, but I just can't.
do people seem to volunteer less today than they used to, in terms of taking on, like teaching Sunday school and having a church office? Do you think?
Well, I know I do it less.
Well, not being personally involved in any of it, I wouldn't know how to answer that.
Were you or are you in Ladies' Aid?
I used to go to Ladies' Aid, but I haven't been lately. I'm always doing something else. You know, I've got so many things going with.
That's good.
With 20 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren and all these kids that I have around here. 7 kids, all married. It's a lot of doing, you know.
Other than Ladies' Aid and Crusaders and Missing Link, are there any other groups that are involved with the church or were in the 40s and 50s that I'm forgetting? Did Scouts ever meet at the church? Or 4-H?
I don't think so. I don't remember.
I don't either.
Were either of you ever involved in the choir, either adult or
No.
adult
No.
choir?
No.
Do you remember church services? Have we always had a choir at that church, or was that something that, like in the 60s?
Off and on through the years. Not any time that it was church choir every single Sunday, but off and on through the years we've had choir.
Okay. Other than Mrs. Van Hoof and Honey Wells, can you remember who ran the choir?
Elaine, that's all I can remember.
Elaine?
She's
Okay.
been there how many years? 27 years or something?
Elaine?
Yeah,
I don't know.
they had the 25th anniversary for her down to Laterno,
That would have been around 1988.
whatever.
That was 25 years?
It could, maybe it was 20. I don't know. It was they had a party for her. I don't know how many years were involved in it.
It was before 88,
Mhm.
I think.
Yeah.
So that was...
Huh.
I think Casperson was a minister then, wasn't he?
Yes, I think it was his idea. Yes.
Ted, before we got started, I asked a little bit about a little bit of conflict or rocky times we had at the church. Were there a couple of different schools of thought or what have you on the charisman deal back in the 60s, early 70s?
I don't recall.
That was when Reverend Streeter was here, remember?
Yes, but I don't remember.
Okay. How, Juanita, are people able to resolve their differences so peacefully, do you think, in terms of what they want out of the religious experience? Some people are a little more fundamental than others. How do you think we're able to get along there?
Well, I think that the people have always been, not to my knowledge, is that any disagreements or anything, that they get together and talk about it, and everything seemed to smooth out and go along.
What do you think, Juanita?
Well, I don't know. I'm a religious mongrel. I was I was baptized in a congregational church as an infant, moved to Hornell, went to the Presbyterian church with my family, and then I got going to the Episcopal church with a girlfriend and was confirmed in the Episcopal church, and then I came here to Middlesex and went to the Methodist church, and Bud and I were married at the Methodist parsonage in Middlesex, and then I met Ted and Helen and came up here to church. So that's, I don't know, but
You've hit most of the
going
Protestant...
to church is fine with me. I don't care. I'm not.
The main focus for doing this is, as I mentioned, 9 years from now, well, part of our roots will have their bicentennial.
Mm-hmm.
What would each of you like to see for the church in 2004?
I hope I'll be here for the church in 2004. I hope we will be here.
What would you like to see going on there?
I guess nothing much different than's going on now. Only a little bit more of the young, a few more young people, a few more children in the church. That's what we miss terribly. I remember when Linda used to, as a little girl, used to crawl underneath the pews at church. Her mother would get so mad at her, but she couldn't sit still.
Well, even in the 80s, I remember Larry and Melanie had a church Sunday school sledding party
Yes.
at their house,
Mhm.
and there were probably 20 kids.
Yep. If we could get something like that going with kids, it would help. But there's just no interest. Your boys come, but I don't know as they really enjoy coming, do they?
They tolerate it. The
They're
older
awful good about doing it, but
the older boy hasn't been there much because he's been working at Wegmans,
Mhm.
and they pay $1 more on Sunday.
Yeah.
And he's looking toward college, and it's kind of hard.
I know,
Did
it's
you you used to have a lot of dinners? Were they mostly at the Grange and some were at the church?
Well, we had church dinners once in a while. The only thing the church did was have bazaars to make money. We used to have a good time and have a lot of interest in the church bazaars.
Tell me about that.
Well, they would have people bring in handcraft items, and they set up the tables in the sessions room and advertise all these stuff. They'd have baked goods and all kinds of handcraft items. And
Was this before Casperson in the 70s? Because I know you folks raised a ton of money in the 70s around the bicentennial. Did they do this back in the 60s and 50s?
yeah, I think they did.
Would this be a Saturday type of thing?
Mhm.
Was there ever any complaints about...
There would be maybe one bazaar a year, usually in the fall, so that people could buy things for Christmas. And, you know, it was advertised and people would come. They have them at the Methodist Church in Canandaigua every year. They have big bazaars that make money, and I think the Presbyterian Church has them too.
And would the money go toward a particular project, fixing a furnace or something like this?
Anything that they usually had a pet thing that they wanted to do with the money, I think. Honey could tell you.
Okay, well I'll be talking to her. Well, I thank you both. Let me ask you one more question, unless you have something you want to mention. The tie-in with the Grange, were a lot of the same people involved in both organizations?
Well, I think they were, really. The Grange was very active up there.
Used to have Grange dinners, and May Henry would make Swedish meatballs and
Yeah.
smorgasbords they had.
Were they the deals with 10 cents an item or something?
At the Grange, you mean?
Yes.
10 cents an item. I don't know, that must have been years ago. If you could buy something for 10 cents, it had to be years ago,
I
Steve.
guess it probably would have been. So a lot of the same people would be involved in church and Grange.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They were all the same. Very few that went to Grange didn't go to church. You know, very few. There was
I don't know much about the Grange,
the
Ted.
Spores, Laura Spore, she was
Okay.
real active in church, you know, and the Grange. There was a lot of them. I should have sat down and made a list of all the people that used to come to church in Grange, but I didn't.
The Grange was I guess and is a Christian-based
Fraternal organization.
fraternal organization.
Right.
You know, you had a regular ritual that you went through, you know, and the master would call the meeting to order. You could recite, but he used the master of the Grange for a long time. They had a regular ritual you went through, you know, and
No, I had a regular program that we followed.
Now, were there different degrees like there are in some organizations?
Yeah.
they had big programs where the women would go in fancy gowns and they'd get all dressed up for their degree. And I was the juvenile matron for a long time.
Okay, so you oversaw things up to like age what?
How old were they when they joined the Grange itself? Do you remember? Did they have to be 16 or 18?
16, I think it was, yeah. Then there was a juvenile group also.
That's what I was matron of the juvenile Grange for years.
From about when to when, ballpark figure?
Oh, Steve, I don't know. When did the Grange stop?
Well, the building was torn down about 72.
72. Well, I was juvenile matron up until there was no more Grange, so.
Did the numbers for the kids compare with, like at Sunday school, the numbers kind of dwindled over the years, or?
You know, there was a lot of kids that came to juvenile Grange because they had a good time. They had the ritual that they had to learn and go through, just like the other Grange, and there was a lot of them that came. The Blakesleys and the Van Hoofs and oh boy, I had a
students.
lot of kids, you know, and,
Was this at the same time the adults
mhm,
were
we
doing their
met at the
thing?
same time. Mhm.
Okay, when did Grange meet?
It was
See.
usually 7 o'clock, was it? It was in the evening.
You know, so 7 or 8 o'clock. I don't remember what
I don't
day
either.
of the week it was.
Was it
no.
Wednesday? I don't know.
And
Oh,
the
gee.
juveniles met in this lower section there, right?
There was the big room in the Grange
Mhm.
for the, and then there was another room on outside. I mean, it was up over the kitchen,
Uh-huh.
and that's where the juveniles met. Yeah.
Now, what would be the order of events like in the juvenile Grange?
Well, they did things for the fair. They learned to do, you know, projects and things like sort of like 4-H.
Was there citizenship
Yeah.
types of
Stuff like
projects
that. Mhm,
involved?
mhm.
And would people take turns bringing refreshments?
We didn't have refreshments in the juvenile Grange.
No, no.
Did they
Not
have
as I remember,
refreshments
they
in the?
didn't.
I don't remember. I know they had Grange suppers all the time, but I don't know if they had refreshments every time they had a. Maybe they did. Boy, people are going to laugh when they see this. The good Grangers that remember things that I don't are going to laugh.
Oh, are you both still on the books with the Grange?
Yeah.
There's. I don't think. I think I sent my resignation in. When they stopped having the Grange, I don't think I am. I think I.
Now Pomona is the county Grange,
Yes.
isn't it?
That's right.
And then
Come on.
from there you go to state.
Okay.
We went to, Ted and Helen and Bud and I were responsible for booth at the county fair, and we won first prize for the Reed's Corners Grange. Bud he was always building something like Kevin, and he made some kind of a turntable and we put the different things that were pertained to Grange on the turntable, and we won first prize. That was in '53, I think, or '52, something like that.
And that was at county Grange?
That was at state.
That was a state Grange?
Yes.
Did you go to a national competition
No.
then, or?
Mm-mm. No, that was as far as
Wow.
we got, state Grange.
That's quite a ways
Down
though.
Syracuse,
At the state fair?
yeah. I
Okay.
remembered following him down. Bud couldn't go, and I followed his car all the way down. He and Helen were, we had a whole
Gee.
bunch of stuff to take down.
Yeah, I remember that.
I learned,
Oh,
he taught
gee.
me how to drive.
Was
Bud,
that right?
Bud wasn't about to teach me how to drive.
Didn't have the patience or what?
And so he said he'd teach me how to drive. So without him, I wouldn't have my license. You know, he was a justice of the peace, and he was bound.
Were
I
you
wasn't
really?
gonna- Oh yeah, for years.
Were
You
you
know
a
that?
were you a hanging judge?
George Ledoux thought he was a hanging judge.
I used to give him a lecture once in a while, but
Okay.
I don't.
he
Oh, gee.
he gave George Ledoux a ticket for failure to have his taillights on one time. And George, when he after we were married and he came up here, he said, "He's the one that gave me the only ticket I ever had."
Well, he didn't give him the ticket, did he? Some trooper, probably.
Yeah, the trooper gave, but he fined him for the ticket. I mean, yeah,
Ah.
the trooper gave him the ticket, but he fined him for it.
Well, I thank you both for your time. I'm sure the next round of pies will have to go in for the birthday today. Thanks again.
Bessie is. It's one of his specialties. Dressed up or tied? I think so.
Nancy, you don't have to work.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to help me with this later.
Okay.
No, go ahead, help balls first.
Did you figure out how we can plug these other two in? I think the county did, we have to move over there for the duration, don't we?
Hi.
Hi, okay.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Say go Bills.
Go Bills.
Boy, they're gonna need it.
Home, Dad, see if I have a three-way plug that plug in there. And then I'll have to get an extension cord and plug those three lights. Did now you mean all the other things are outside?
Did you have to wait to see a race or something?
Yeah.
This is the hors d'oeuvres.
Just making sure it's worth saying thanks. And I'm here with Anna Frankish at her home on Route 247. Anna, I hear that Herb is up in the mountains today, that's correct?
That's correct. He's having several days off and enjoying himself with the fellows.
Very good. Anna, I'd like to ask you a few questions about the Rote Frankish connection and Reed Corners back in earlier years. You were the daughter of who?
Grover Rowe and Ida Bell
Grover Rote and Ida Bell. Ida Bell's last name was what?
Watkins.
Watkins. And did you say that her family came from Gorham?
Yes, they lived in Gorham.
Okay. You don't know how they met, do you? Is that?
No, I don't. I
Okay.
have no idea.
Now your brother Grover had two other brothers, Heber and Jim Rote, did he not?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I believe their father was Charles Rote.
I think so.
Okay.
I wouldn't be sure.
When your dad was growing up, where did they live?
They lived where Heber Rowe used to live.
Okay, and who lived there after Heber? Is that up near where Ed and Ken lived?
Yes. Well, it's the same house, not in the the old place.
Now, when you say the old place, is that where Bruce Rote lives now?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, so that would be on the west side next to Gene Gage's house.
Right. Mhm.
Okay, and they had no sisters, did they? It was just the three boys?
Yes, that's all I know of.
Okay. Did your father go to Wilson's Corners School?
I don't know that.
You don't know that?
I suppose he did.
Okay. What siblings, brothers and sisters do you have? Did you or do you have?
I had one sister.
Frances.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, was Frances older than you?
Yes, she was a couple years older.
Okay. What month, day, and year were you born?
In January 3rd, 1918.
1918. So that was just a few months before World War I ended. Your first recollections when you were 5, 6 years old, where were you folks living?
We have always lived in this place right here.
So you've always lived 3 houses south of the Reed Corners Church.
Mhm.
Do you have any idea how old this house is?
Well, over 100 years old, we know that.
Did you ever find who built the house?
We don't know. There is a name by the Mason, somebody by the name of Mason used to live here, evidently, because his name is on on the door in one of the, on the cellar door.
Okay.
And so that has always been here, so we are assuming that he was the first owner of the house.
Now, your parents, Grover and Idabel, were they Baptists or were they Congregationalists?
They were Baptists.
They were Baptists. What did you and your sister Frances do when you were 5, 6, 7 years of age for entertainment?
I don't remember too much about that. I remember going to school and going to the little schoolhouse over on the crossroad. And
When you were home, did you play with dolls or
yes,
read?
I played with dolls quite a bit. And
Go ahead.
yes, and we often went across lots to school, and we'd have to jump across the creek
Okay.
to get there. And we had a lot of good times at the school. Mildred Conklin was the teacher. The first teacher I had was Jimmy Blodgett.
Jim Blodgett. Now, the country school that you went to was District Number 8, as I remember, over there on the point there,
Yes.
Reed's Corners. Was it were there 2 rooms in the schoolhouse, but only 1 room was used?
The school room with all the desks was used, and the other room they called the cloak room, and it was big enough so the fellows could play games out there, kind of like basketball. Only it wasn't quite that big, but they could play games with basketball and other balls, and so at recess time that was where they played when the weather was cold.
Do you have any idea why there were 2 rooms there? At one time, were there a lot more kids?
I don't know about that. I never happened to hear. But also the restrooms were in the other room, and the water fountain was there in that room, and so.
So the restrooms were in the big room? Okay. Was the outside of the school painted?
Yes.
What was it, white or red, or what was it?
Always white as far as I can remember.
Was there more than 1 door into the main school room?
No, as I recall, no, yes. I mean, the one entrance to the school, there was 1 door, but there was a door from the cloakroom into the main schoolroom.
Okay.
And I'm not sure whether there was another room that went into the cloakroom. I don't hardly think so.
When you would go into the Reed Corners School, was it off of Depew Road or was it off of what we call County Road 18?
County Road 18, does that go to Gorham?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, it was off, the entrance was on that side of the school.
Would there have been parking there for some cars?
Oh yes, there was lots of parking room, and there was what they called a coal shed in the one building on other outside of the school at one side, and so that was always known as the coal, the room where they stored the coal for the year.
Was there any room for a baseball diamond or any place for kids to,
Oh yes, Now they had a baseball diamond. And
where was that? Where the trailer is now, or where did they play baseball?
Yes, it was about where the trailer is now, I would say.
Okay. You said your first teacher was Jim Blodgett. Did you go to school like for 1st grade when you were about 6?
I think so.
Okay, they didn't have kindergarten then, did they?
No, not
Okay.
at all.
Was it an all-day affair for you?
That I don't remember.
Okay. So you would go across lots unless it was real muddy or snowy? The road out here, 247, was that a gravel road back when you were first going to school?
Yes,
Okay. Even that must have been muddy at times, wasn't
I
it?
don't remember about that,
Don't
but
remember?
it was.
No.
But we also played games, and across the road were a very large clump of quince bushes. And the girls, during recess time, Mildred would let us cross the road and play house in those
In a
quince
bush.
bushes. And we had it fixed up like a playhouse in the bushes, and we had lots of good times over there,
And it kept the boys and the girls from fighting probably, didn't it?
probably.
Now, was that in the little lot next to where Flynn's live now, or where Hazel Wilkinson lived?
No, on the side toward Gorham on County Road 18.
Okay, so it was still on the schoolhouse property?
No, not really.
Was it on Bigham's farm property?
Well, if Bickham's owned it at that time, I would say yes.
Okay, I think they probably did. Now, you would have walked to school with Francis?
Mhm.
Did you then hook up with Dorothy Conklin, or?
No, she generally rode with her mother to school because
Okay.
her mother drove.
So it was you and Francis going to school?
Mhm.
Okay. Was she, how much older was Francis? Was Francis than you?
Well, nearly 3 years.
3 years.
Between
So
2
when
and
you're
3
in
years.
first grade, she's in fourth grade.
Yeah,
She was about half through
yeah.
with that school. Did you miss Francis when she went to school and you were home by yourself and your mother?
I don't remember about that at all.
Okay.
But I guess we were busy and
Who were some of the kids that you were in school with, like in second and third and fourth grade, besides your sister? Dorothy Conklin?
of course Dorothy, and there was Effie Hall and Doris Bigham. And I remember them especially.
Do you remember some of the boys that would have been there?
Yes, I remember one fella whose name was June Caveney, and he was a great big fellow, and everyone was afraid of him.
Really?
He was good-natured, but also you didn't want to get in his way.
Kind of a gentle giant then, huh? Where did the Caveneys live?
Where Martin Cohn used to live.
Which
where
is-
the Burgesses used to live.
Okay, the next house south of yours, where Martha Burgess used to live. That was the Caveney farm. Did his?
Well, I wouldn't say Caveney, it was the Cohn farm, Martin Cohn.
Okay, so Caveneys worked for Combs?
I don't know whether I thought that he just lived with them.
Oh, okay, okay. Do you know, is the Caveney, is he still alive, do you know?
I have no idea, no.
Okay. Were there any Gages that you were in school with, or Geisels?
Lots of Geisels, yes.
Okay.
It was Louis Geisel was there the first few years when I was in school. I remember he was there.
Okay, how about his sister Margaret?
Yes, I think she was there too.
Okay, so did you have Jim Blodgett for 1 year or more than 1 year?
Oh, I think 1 year
1
maybe.
year? What was done for discipline? What did they do for kids that acted up, whether it was talking or playing pranks?
I don't remember about the punishment. I know we were very cautious and we behaved ourselves quite well. There must have been a reason.
Did it seem strange being in school with great big kids too, or that's just the way it was?
That's just the way it was, and so and every class, you know, would, like if you were in the 5th grade or whatever, you would all march up to the front and sit on one long bench, and the teacher would be directly in front of them, and they got their lessons right there, and so the rest of the school was supposed to be paying attention to their homework.
Was that called a recitation bench?
Well, it probably was.
Was there a blackboard in the
Oh
school?
yes, there was blackboards and maps. I remember the maps especially.
Did the teacher, when you came in the front door, you could come into the main school room, were there rows of desks then for the children?
Oh, yes.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, how many kids would have been there at an average day when you were like in 4th or 5th grade? Are we talking 20 kids?
For like a 4th grade?
No, of the total
Oh, the
school.
total school. I would say so, at least.
And they'd range from 1st grade to 8th grade?
Any,
In
pardon?
8th grade, would they go up to 8th
Oh,
grade?
yes,
When you got to about 8th grade, would a lot of the kids have quit school by then?
No, I don't think so.
So you'd have about as many 8th graders as you would 1st graders?
Well, I doubt if there would be quite that many, but
Okay.
there were quite a few.
Did kids come in all sorts of different clothing? Did some families have a lot more money than others? Or was everybody about in the same boat?
I guess everybody was about in the same boat.
Back in the mid-20s, was farming paying very well, or was it kind of just getting by around here in Reed's Corners?
Oh, you were getting by.
So you were getting
by all
enough
right.
you were getting enough to eat then, and
Until the Depression came, and then everybody had to be careful.
when you were 2nd and 3rd grade, what would you have worn to school?
Just cotton dresses, and then in the wintertime, heavier clothing like wool skirts and tops, and always stockings and long black bloomers, and
Is a bloomer like a slip? What's a bloomer?
no, an undergarment, the
Okay.
same as underwear.
Okay.
Uh, So that was, and also I can remember wearing button shoes to school too.
Okay.
They have a special button hook to button those shoes with.
You still have a pair of those?
Oh, no.
No? Did you, I heard that kids used to take baked potatoes or potatoes to school, keep their hands warm. Did you ever do that?
No, but we did have hot lunches in the wintertime, and different families would bring in a hot dish. And so several days a week we would have a hot dish at noon.
That had to be a treat.
Yes, well, we had an old coal stove in the middle of the school, and so things were kept warm on top of that when somebody did bring food.
What did your mother usually bring when it was her turn?
Had no idea.
What meal did you like the best of the hot meals?
Oh, I guess Spanish rice was a favorite of everybody's.
Spanish rice? Do you remember, or was it so long ago that you can't remember when school started and when it ended, as far as the time of day?
No, I don't remember about that.
Did you have, besides lunch, did you have one or more recesses to go out and blow the steam off?
Well, I know in the morning we always had like a 15-minute recess, and so that was always, the big boys always enjoyed that a lot.
Was it, when you got along, did school go till like the end of May, or do you know when school ended for the
I think it
year?
was about the same as it is now.
Was there some time that the boys would have to take off from school to harvest in the fall?
I don't recall about that.
Okay. Did you have homework
Oh, yes.
that you
we
had to do here at home?
Mhm,
Mhm.
yeah. And also, I remember another thing, as we were going to school, when we went the other way around, by road, we were always kind of afraid to go by the old evaporator. That was an old building there, and so it looked spooky to us, so we always hurried by
You
there.
kind of ran by?
I don't know that we did, but
Now,
we were
would it be
frightened.
near dark sometimes on your way to school, or was it always
Oh,
daytime?
I think it was always daytime.
Now, the old evaporator, that was between the house on the corner and Tom and Marge Henry's house, is that
Right.
correct? When you were young, was that in operation, or had that closed down?
I think I remember when they had apples there, but that was only for a few years, I guess, because after that I remembered it was deserted and.
You probably were too young to know who owned it, weren't you?
No, we have no idea.
Okay. So you think it was running a little bit when you were young?
I think so.
Okay. So you would walk to school either around the road or cross lots, and you had Mildred Conklin most of your time. What games did you play besides house in the quince bushes?
Well, there's always the usual drop the handkerchief and those little games out in the schoolyard. And, well, some of us kind of avoided the rougher games that the bigger boys were playing. And in fact, we were kind of sometimes afraid to go out in the cloakroom at noon when they had, at lunchtime when they had their break and were playing, because the big fellows were playing with the basketball out there, and I guess you felt like you were going to get run over or by the big fellows, and so it was a lot more peaceful to stay right in the schoolroom.
Who was your best girlfriend besides your sister Frances?
Well, of course, Dorothy Spohr and Doris Bigham. Doris Bigham and Effie Hall used to be in our Sunday school class that Mary Mumby taught, and
Okay.
and there was a Martha Pip. She always came to Sunday school, and so that was nice. We always look forward to Sunday and Sunday school.
Tell me about your dad.
Well, he was a very inventive person, and he had he worked at, after graduating from Cornell, he went to,
He graduated from Cornell.
yeah.
Did he really? That was pretty rare back in those days, wasn't
Well,
it?
it might have been, I don't know. And so then he went to work for Kellogg's cornflake place in Michigan. And he stayed there until his father got Parkinson's